Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime, here with my next Boruto anime episode review. This one's going to be for episode 17, which is called Sarada Run. And yeah, while I think this episode ultimately has a very simple plot, that being just kind of antics as Sarada basically performs a little chore for Sakura while Sakura is away on a little vacation of her own. I thought it allowed for some pretty good development of characters and just some nice time with them. We got to learn more about, I suppose, Sarada's character here, given that she got to be the focus of an episode for the first time in a while. They really, I think, developed quite nicely. I think Chocho and Sarada's their friendship. They also, I think, established a decent amount about her kind of relationship with the boys and how she is very careful to never let them see any different side of her apart from that, standard prim proper side. And that was a big thing in this episode of her not wanting to show any sense of adventurousness in front of them. And I think overall a lot of the things in this episode ended up coming together quite nicely, even if it was a fairly inconsequential episode overall. But it's a clear setup for Naruto Gaiden, which is coming up in a few episodes' time. And I appreciated what we got here. The Sakura content in this episode I liked, in that it kind of showed that, okay, within this dynamic of Sasuke not really being around, Sarada does a lot of stuff at home to support kind of her mom, who's obviously very busy. And but the big thing is that she's kind of almost too set in her ways. She's not very adventurous, and so when Sakura's just like, why don't you add some tomatoes to that soup? She initially is like, no, but over the course of this episode, where she kind of learns to be a little bit more adventurous, have a bit more fun, just ending the episode with her putting the tomatoes in was kind of a nice little bookmark, showing that, okay, even though it's not the biggest episode, Sarada's actually learned something from this episode. And what Sakura does in the episode is she goes off on this little vacation. She finally has a day off. Ino and her just go for a kind of little vacation for the day, and the result is basically that Ino brings her to the place where Sakura and Sasuke had their first date, and we just get a little kind of reminiscing from Sakura about that it's very meaningful to her, kind of just establishing that the two of them actually did have some dates, even though the first one they say here was only 2.5 minutes. It was still very meaningful to Sakura. That combined with the scene at the start of the episode where she asks, okay, I'm going on my vacation, is there anything you want me to bring back for you? And then Sarada's just like, a dad. And Sakura is just like, oh, that's serious, but you know why that isn't the case. Clear setup for Gaiden, where this is directly referenced, I think, as well. As for the rest of the episode, I did like it in that Sarada was just like, yeah, it's such a simple chore. I'll just take this kind of rabbit kind of teddy toy and bring it to the hospital. It'll be simple. I'll just take the train. But she goes on the train normally, puts it up on the rack, and then gets off and forgets about it because she reads that nice letter that Sakura left for her. And then the result is just basically Sarada realizing that she can't get that teddy back unless she basically breaks some of the rules. And that is running across the rooftops, jumping on top of the train, that sort of thing. The stuff that Boruto, Shikada, Inojin, and Denki are doing in this episode. And she doesn't want to be shown to be like them, but she's kind of forced to do it. And as she's forced to do it, kind of realizes how kind of fun it is. So I'd like to see if in upcoming episodes, and they show just kind of Sarada doing things around the village, I'd like to see her maybe when she's sort of on her own, her doing stuff like that. Maybe she jumps on the train really quickly or something like that. It was pretty cool. And then the boys, when they realize that she's maybe around, they try to kind of make fun of her for if we catch her doing something that she's not meant to do, we can tease her about it for a while. Just a nice little dynamic, nothing too serious, but just added a little plot of just her constantly ending up running into that group, which is trying to teach Denki some things about fishing and so on. and she still keeps coming across them. But yeah, she ends up kind of having to rely on Cho-Cho basically after the first couple of attempts to get the teddy back fail. And the core here that we get is that while Sarada is very book smart, Cho-Cho is the very street smart one. She's just like, okay, we went to the Lost and Found, which Sarada wasn't really aware was a thing. They got this other package that was very similar to the way it was wrapped up, but it wasn't their teddy. So they kind of realized, okay, if we can figure out who got our one by figuring out what this one actually is, we can figure out where our one is. And it was just like, okay, we'll go to this specific person I know who's very knowledgeable about these things. And so they go to this kind of basically this market of goods from the other kind of villages. So kind of Cho-Cho explains that the reason she knows about this is because her mother, obviously being from the Cloud Village, often comes to this market to get Cloud Village food when she has a craving for that, given that she now lives in the Leaf Village. So that was a cool little dynamic for the, Choji's family, basically, Cho-Cho's family life. Nice reference of her. I'd like to see some more of Karui. Yeah, I hope we get some sort of a dynamic with them. They seem to touch on it in that, like, Choji, I think, is in the opening for a decent bit. But, yeah, that the result is that, it really shows their friendship because Cho-Cho gives away a really rare packet of chips to this woman to get this information. And then the kind of end result of the episode is that Sakura has to use her training from what they were just doing in school, that being to learn to walk on water, the chakra control. She has to do that to walk into the river, because what they were doing with this kind of doll, which is part of this ritual, was that they have to send it down the river, and Sarada, of course, walks out into the river to get it back, but ends up falling in, but throws the actual teddy, which they finally get back to safety, to Cho-Cho. And it leads to this really, really funny moment of just finally the boys kind of catch Sarada doing something that they didn't expect her to do. She just comes out of the river right in front of where they're fishing, and they're all like, "What are you doing in the river, Sarada?" And she's just like, "It was hot. I was taking a swim. Is that okay?" And she just has this like death stare that she gives them, and they're all like, "Okay, we won't ever mention this ever again." It was just a really fun dynamic showing you that, like, obviously at times Sakura could kind of be a little bit scary like that, and so it's kind of transferred over a bit with Sarada. And we get to see them give the doll back, and the girl is very happy about it, and we see Sakura return, and just showing you that she basically says, it was really easy in the end what happened, and just shows that, no, it wasn't easy, and what she's learned to be a little bit more adventurous going forward. So overall, like a simple episode to the point, but I like as I said, the Sarada Cho-Cho dynamic. I like the Sakura focus we got in this episode for a little bit, establishing a little bit more about the somewhat undefined Sakura and Sasuke relationship, as well as just showing little things like Ino and Sakura still friends. Bit of Cho-Cho family dynamic presented here with her mother. And just, yeah, a lot of fun and a lot of dynamic stuff going on here, showing you that the show can be good and entertaining even when it's not the direct, like, completely set on the plot or anything like that. I think this will ultimately be pretty solid development for Gaiden, which I'm pretty excited to get to. So yeah, that's been the review for this episode of Boruto. Next week it looks like it's going to be kind of an episode that really heavily references the OVA from the Boruto movie, which is the day Naruto became Hokage, where Himawari ends up basically shutting down Naruto's chakra network on the day he becomes Hokage, so Konohamaru has to fill in for him. Now that's only a 10-minute OVA, and the episode is going to be 22 minutes, so what people seem to be saying based on the description is that it's going to be an episode where from the present day they tell this story from the past. So it's going to be interesting what the reason this story comes up again is. I assume this will be the episode where we probably get a better understanding of Boruto's relationship with his sister, and maybe Himawari gets a little bit more focus. Maybe establishing stuff like, oh, how did Naruto feel when he realized he missed his coronation as Hokage? How was the family reaction to like Himawari doing all this stuff? How did Boruto kind of in a way fix his relationship with his sister after this event that happened? So that should be really fun. I'm just really interested, like, are they just going to directly put in clips from that OVA in the episode, or have they reanimated it? Because that could be really interesting when we get to the Boruto movie kind of time stuff. In that, are they just going to show clips from the movie in the episodes? Are they going to, actually reanimate the movie, or what? That's going to be a very interesting decision. So it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this one. A little bit different in that not everyone's aware of the OVAs. You have to assume most fans are aware of the movie for Boruto. But that'll be interesting for next week. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.